So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Yogi and Constantine, for allowing me to present here at this wonderful conference. This presentation hopefully will provide something a little bit different compared to some of the other presentations. And to that end, I will start on a much more personal note than you are perhaps used to. My name is Levi van de Bogaart. I have a BA and MA in history from Utrecht University, and I'm also a former student at the MA Philosophy here at Erasmus. I live and work in Nunspeet, a municipality of around 30,000 inhabitants, located on the Veluwe at the heart of the Netherlands. And this is my brother, Job. I say little, yes, because he is 2 years younger than me, and especially because even though he looks like an adult now, he will mentally always be around 3 to 4 years old. So he will always be my little brother. He was born with a brain injury and severe epilepsy, and he was one of the first to receive an experimental and very risky medical operation that actually severed most of his left hemisphere from the rest of his brain in an attempt to lessen the severity of his seizures. Whilst being successful and quite possibly saving his life, the trade-off, however, was that the right half of his body would be and remain mostly paralyzed for the rest of his life. But the body, of course, is a miraculous thing. And in the aftermath of this surgery, the intact parts of my brother's brain took up most functions. And to our surprise, he has since developed a growing vocabulary to be able to express himself. He has learned multiple new routines and habits, like eating without assistance, taking off his own coat, and walking with support. And in general, he has throughout the years strengthened his ability to deal with life's many challenges and stressors. So growing up with a disabled sibling makes you acutely aware of inequality and differences between those able and those less so. For me, my brother has always been just who he is, a social, a joyful, and perpetually childlike spirit. For others in general, unfamiliar with disabled people, he's often seen as different and strange. Rather than celebrated for his uniqueness, to them he's someone to be pitied because he's not normal like us, not able like us, he is disable. This is the curse, I would say, of the foreign and the unknown. My brother is part of one of the least included groups within society, simply because they do not have a voice of their own, at least not in the way we tend to accept, and they are fully dependent on their environment. Therein, however, also lie powerful lessons for others going forward, and I will try to capture those in this presentation. Currently, my brother lives at De Laan, a small-scale residence located in the center of Nunspeet and owned by a healthcare organization, Philadelphia, housing on the ground floor 2 groups of severely disabled clients, and on the first floor 2 groups of residents with mild intellectual disability. I need to emphasize currently, because these small-scale homes are rapidly disappearing in the Netherlands. For while the costs of disability care in the Netherlands continue to rise to alarming heights, the influx of new healthcare professionals is expected to keep declining in the coming years. And within this context, small-scale, locally embedded and inclusive homes for disabled individuals are at high risk of disappearing from society, and especially the more severely disabled individuals. Indeed, the careful interplay and gradual co-creation of meaning taking place within such local ecologies, built through the efforts of many people over many years, can just as quickly and easily be disrupted and destroyed. For with environmental degradation comes semiocide, the direct or indirect destruction of semiotic processes, weakening the emergence of meaning construed in co-participation with our environments. This is a crucial concept because it helps to make clear what we as a group, as a family group, are really fighting against. We are fighting against the destruction of essential meaning-making processes for this care environment. So, as a case study in defining the dysbiosis of industrial culture, this presentation takes the current project of future-proofing a small-scale home for disabled individuals located in Nunspeet, the Netherlands. In late 2024, Philadelphia organized a meeting with the families of the severely disabled clients living at Laan and proposed that due to these circumstances that I just explained, location Laan would no longer be financially sustainable in a few years for this category of clients. Therefore, the best option would be to move to a brand new institutional complex located outside of the village of Nunspeet in the middle of the forest. Here, a large enough number of clients can be amassed from different small-scale locations in the area. Bigger groups of 9 clients and more groups of at least 4 within a single living area, of which several can be combined on the terrain where, with additional buildings such as a small church and regular communal events organized by the company, a complete simulacrum, I would say, of village life away from actual village life can be offered. So, as you might expect, families, and myself included, reacted with shock to this news, which to most of them came completely out of the blue. Having deliberately chosen to house their child or sibling in a small-scale and centrally located home, not a large-scale complex hidden away from society within the forest, they did not appreciate feeling almost forced to accept this offer by the company. So, in the face of possible shutdown, a feral ecology of family and friends emerged to resist its own semiocide, and instead opt to participate in the transition from a primarily institution-centered form of care to a more distributed, community-based form of care. Many steps have first to be taken in order to arrive at that shared goal. First, we had to organize ourselves and find people in our midst prepared to act and speak on behalf of the others. In a few meetings at the town hall, a suitably neutral location, we were able to voice our worries and concerns, as well as ideas to resist the company's strategy. Secondly, we had to convince Philadelphia to be open to exploring a different path with us. And this began with a shared research project in which, through several meetings, representatives of the family group, representatives of the personnel working at Laan, who obviously have a very important role as well, and Philadelphia management and advisors together investigated the positives and negatives of 3 different scenarios, namely continuing to stay at Laan with possible adaptations, 2, moving to the new forest complex, or 3, finding an alternative location within the village of Nunspeet. So in the end, 2 options remained, and they were first presented to the family group. Either we all stay, or we all move to the forest complex. That was the choice that we gave ourselves as family group, and the decision to stay was unanimous. So that was a clear decision, which was then presented to Philadelphia, together with the offer to collaborate on future-proofing the Laan location, whatever it might take. In this presentation, which I gave on behalf of the others, I included, among several other slides, also this one, which contrasts 2 different approaches to this set of problems. And yeah, I think it made some people think. It probably made some other people wonder, what the hell is this guy talking about? I also simply had to remind Philadelphia management of their own vision and mission statement, which was interesting. This is translated to English. So if you go to the website of Philadelphia, it actually says, when it was founded as a company, parents wanted to provide small-scale care close to home. And the entire sector was organized around large institutions. That is indeed how it was in the past, but we see it currently becoming like that again. So, and then they say our care is still small-scale and local. So that's interesting. Here it says something similar. We're at the heart of society, preferably within the neighborhood, because that is where life happens. And Philadelphia's clients are simply local residents now, and they say we call this community building. So that's to them an important concept. So what I simply had to do is remind them of their vision and hold them accountable for it by saying, let's actually put these ideas and good intentions into action. And to that end, I also propose to take a network-based approach. So this was also a slide in a presentation I gave, in which I suggested that if you want to support people in a good way, then you have to strengthen the networks they are part of. So that is at the heart of this network-based approach. You don't place them outside of their networks. You strengthen those networks by building on what's already there. And that's something that you do together, right? So in the most simple terms. To our surprise, Philadelphia accepted our offer and made ours available for a project manager to aid our efforts. And together we wrote a project plan according to the format required by the company. This proved to be quite a challenge, as we were still on quite different wavelengths in terms of conceptual frameworks and had to work hard to find commonality amongst the many differences. This basically goes back to the slide contrasting the ecological and industrial approaches, let's say. Philadelphia wanted quantifiable proof. They wanted assurances from the outset. Every decision had to be approved by their upper management. And our feral ecology from the family group, on the other hand, we simply wanted to start somewhere and not design and plan too much and see what works and what not. So, of course, we had to meet somewhere in the middle. And in early 2025, the project plan was finalized and we could finally begin with the first practical steps. So, okay, future proofing. That's what I talked about. First of all, what does future proofing mean? Well, future proofing is more a continual process than a goal state per se. In this sense, the project plan mentions 4 agreed upon pillars that, when combined, will establish and maintain a future-proof home, hopefully. First, kitchen table talks will be held with all parents of the residents to find out what their needs are and what they are prepared to contribute to the project. Second, we invest in networking or community building because these same parents, critically bad as they are at asking other people for help, need help in recognizing and mobilizing their own networks. And third, we investigate to what extent technology can help unburden personnel and improve the well-being of residents. Fourth, we look at what policies might need to be changed at the land location. So this is what we agreed upon as an approach. And so we started by having these kitchen table talks. It's interesting that within disability healthcare, there's something called the life areas, so leefgebieden. And one of these, actually the first one, it says meaning or meaning making. So that's an interesting one. And then there's also, of course, housing, finances, social relationships, physical health, mental health, and work. And we combined those, so the different life areas, with a so-called wheel of 5. So what can the client do? What can other people do? What kind of tools can we use? What can a family do? And what can the company itself do? So if you plot these two together, you get a sort of matrix. And we use those to talk about, well, what are the possibilities at the individual level, so the level of the resident himself or herself? What are the possibilities at the group level? And what are the possibilities at the location level of Laan as a whole? And we made an overview of all those possibilities, essentially to determine simply what can we do next and who can do that, who's prepared to do that. What will we do later and what are we not prepared to do? And if you approach it a bit more academically, you could say that we're simply looking for the adjacent possibles in this complex environment. So that's a term by Kaufman. I think David Snowden also talks about adjacent possibles a lot. So you can look into that. So the goal here is not to look for anything specific, but simply to seek and then set up those favorable conditions that allow for the emergence of multiple solutions. In this way, we are multi-solving for several challenges, as Yogi also talked about, but then on a whole different scale. We're trying to multi-solve as well, but on a much smaller scale. So the adjacent possibles are one element to the answer of to the question of how to affect change. On the whole, I propose that we are seeking to inaugurate a process of organic growth by first looking for the adjacent possibles and then introducing slow change into a familiar and habitualized environment by carefully and deliberately setting up new habits through repetition and ritualization of patterns. Within this context, biosemiotics helps us to understand how to affect such change in a meaningful and sustainable way. So as a novel field and conceptual framework, it provides us with a grip on what is happening here by giving a clear view of semiotic processes, developing and adapting within this care environment. Moreover, biosemiotics offers a powerful lens through which to investigate what kinds of semiotic exchange help to facilitate a system's ability, a system's stability and transformation. Sorry. For this is, of course, what we're hoping to achieve here. So the question then is how this so-called future-proofing is achieved. From a biosemiotic perspective, I would propose that within all ecosystems, basically, future-proofing means first and foremost building semiotic resilience. In other words, ensuring that the system can adapt not just materially, but in how it generates and sustains meaning. In this case, the transformation of the home for its disabled residents at Laan depends on creating a living network of shared responsibility, where care is not just performed, but co-signified in a way that makes it sustainable and meaningful for all involved. Future-proofing by way of building semiotic resilience, in other words, is the anti-semiotic activity par excellence. As such, we should reframe care itself as deeply interpretive, a deeply interpretive multi-layered process, where biological, technological, and cultural systems interact, shifting the focus from mere functionality to meaning-making, showing that disability care is not just about meeting basic needs, but about fostering meaningful connections across a span of modes of communication and being. So let's go into this for a bit. What are these modes of communication and being? When functioning well, the group of residents, together with their caretakers, functions as a family and becomes like a household. This familiar household feeling of safety and containment is crucial to their well-being. So we might ask, what is the logos of this oikos, of this home? What are the necessary ingredients to the flourishing of this ecology? Daily life at Laan involves personalized routines, shared meals, and small rituals, sign-rich practices that weave care into a meaningful environment. As became clear from the kitchen table talks we held, the extreme importance of ensuring stability and safety for the residents and their families cannot be overstated. Therefore, any change introduced within this environment must be done deliberately and with great care. Unfamiliar faces, sights, and sounds can trigger fear and confusion. Changes in routine can destabilize a client's mental and physical state and disturb or even halt their eating or sleeping habits. So in this sense too, semiocide is a risk always looming. Change therefore begins with establishing a familiar, habitualized and predictable world. Then willfully introducing change within this environment, but slow change. Repetition and ritualization over extended periods of time allows for certain pathways to develop and ingrain themselves into the brains and bodies of these residents. Hurrying change makes little sense in this context, for as Kalevi already mentioned, when environments change too fast, we lose our capacity to map onto the world. That is obviously semiocide, and that doubly goes for this care environment. As such, the role of the residents themselves within the semiotic processes becomes decisive, and this brings into view the importance of the caretaker's craft. The practice of learning the communicative signs, gestures, and cries of the residents is what I would call the caretaker's craft. This craft is deeply biosemiotic and profoundly 4E, that is to say, embodied, embedded, enacted, and extended, or better yet, 5EA, including obviously the ecological and effective dimensions as well. It demands continual sensory attunement to individual residents and to the group as a whole. What are the affordances present in this environment, this complex field of signification? How do I build and sustain resonance and entrainment in this moment as a caretaker? Accurate diagnosis requires sign interpretation, involving all senses and a synesthetic unity in our experience. Use of language is often of very little value here. The words themselves, when uttered, are reduced to the intentions, emotionality, and affectivity transmitted. Touch matters a great deal more as the most basic form of interaction possible. Does the skin feel cold or heated? Does a resident seek physical closeness or distance? Touch affirms safety. It says, I am here and you are here as well. Smell and taste afford additional input to the synesthetic experience. The ear might notice a resident being more or less vocal than usual. Sight, finally, and though inseparable from the other senses, remains the most important tool in the caretaker's toolbox. Does a resident act content, or is there unrest or discomfort in the body or facial expressions? The more a caretaker familiarizes himself with a resident's umwelt and invests in his or her unique and sensitive relationship with the resident, the better the care he or she is able to provide. This kind of care is about the co-creation of life worlds rather than service delivery. The relationships it consists of, this life world, often become to a degree symbiotic. What I've found in the past few years, as I've gotten to know all the residents much better than before, it really is impossible to relate meaningfully to them without invoking elements of the caretaker's craft. Thus, what is at stake here in this project is the expansion of the caretaker role to involve the whole community. And I would argue that there is indeed something, in a way, sacred to learning and practicing these nurturing semiotic activities. Because at first glance, there's a strangeness, a hiddenness, and apparent silence to the sensory field it works with. But behind that exterior, residents' bodies and souls speak in many ways, whether whispering, chattering, or singing loudly. There's a pure expressivity present there, a wild awareness, animated and animating. They too influence, alter, and transform the world around them, these residents. They too participate in semiosis. The resident's behavior is strongly meaning-making. Biosemiosis is inclusive of even the least included among us. And even they, or maybe especially they, give back a lot. Even small gestures, eye contact, a smile, a shared laugh, sustains the semiotic fabric of care. As David Abram might say, if we are indeed well tuned for these sign-mediated relationships, they will nourish us with their otherness. We will discover that caregiving is itself also a gift. And so disability itself as a sign-mediated phenomenon, emerging within a network of meanings, composed. So disability itself is a sign-mediated phenomenon, emerging within a network of meanings, composed of diagnostic categories, social expectations, legal classifications, and cultural narratives. Against dominant ableist perspectives, however, we find that residents are not merely passive and reactive elements in this equation. Rather, through the biosemiotic lens, it becomes clear that residents take an active part in semiotic processes, and are thus each able, in their own way, to meaningfully contribute to the re-signification and transformation of their care. From an ethical perspective, such insights offer a chance for us to powerfully revitalize concepts and experiences of disability, care, agency, and interdependency. Ableist frameworks often view disabled individuals through a deficit lens. A biosemiotic view instead affirms their agency as meaning makers. So, I'll speed it up a bit from here. How then to take the aforementioned network-based approach? So how to actually build and sustain community? This is a much more complicated question when considering the category of residents involved. They often cannot act or speak for themselves, and connection and communication functions along very different lines than the normative language-centered communication. Residents rely on others to include them and to speak and act on their behalf, and these people too require others to speak and act on their behalf. So in this slide, I show you the first phase of, let's say, future-proofing, which consists of establishing familiarity through visibility and increased interaction. This is about the visibility of the home and the residents in a physical way and in a digital way. We can use social media, we can use like the local newspaper, but also physically, we want to make these people visible in the neighborhood. We also designed a logo. We have them participate in local events. We have them be present there as they were before, but now obviously we are conscious of why and how we're doing that. We organize plenty of family meetups in which we include not just the parents, but also siblings and the wider family. And we organize neighborhood festivities, like a yearly barbecue where the whole neighborhood is invited to the LAN. And we're trying to involve, local businesses, residents, everyone basically, and in a sense, open up the home. And also volunteer days, because volunteers are very important. So here are some pictures of all these different activities that we're organizing, how we're making the residents visible, how we're opening up the home. So there they are meeting Sinterklaas. So from this familiarity, a preparedness to help, hopefully, will grow organically. So this goes back to the concept of organic growth. And help, that's volunteering, obviously. People might want to do something every once in a while, but we're hoping to get people to volunteer on a regular basis. And they can do that for individual residents or something on the group level or maybe on the location level as well. So that's what we're working towards. This is from the barbecue that we organized. Big event. Lots of people showed up. We had a, I don't know the term in English, an orgel. I don't like the sound of that, but the residents enjoyed it, at least some of them. So, and thirdly, once we have that group of people, those volunteers, then we will establish working groups to give more structure to the activities that we're organizing. And we're thinking about having a garden group, a cooking group, and an events group so far, and to have some coordination above that to make sure everything goes well. And we actually started with the garden. It was looking not that well, and we invested a lot of time. Local shops, they gave us plants, so we could really make something beautiful out of it. And this is sort of how it looks now, and you can see people are pleased with it, so that's good. Yeah, I wanted to say something about the garden. It really stands as a symbol of well-being through care. So it emphasizes the extent to which care is situated at the heart of what we are doing at the LAN. The garden as space reveals the importance of the necessity of taking the time to let things grow, of neither interfering too much nor too little, of collaborating together and with nature to make something beautiful, and of having fun while doing it. So, in the space of the garden, nature and culture find each other, and meaning is made together and with nature. The garden also reminds us that this work is never finished. Future-proofing by way of building symbiotic resilience is not a goal state, but a perpetual process. Oops. Okay. In closing, just a few remarks. To future-proof disability care, we must nurture the interpretive ecologies where care and meaning evolve together, where care sustains meaning-making and is itself sustained by meaning-making. This is why we have much to learn from these residents. They teach us that despite our self-estimations as independent and autonomous, we, situated within our umwelts, completely rely on other organisms and our habitats. So to that, I would say embrace that reliance. Seek interdependence, not independence. Include others in your habitat. We all rely on one another, and that's not just a good thing, it's absolutely necessary. Don't forget those unable to feign independence. Don't forget those made invisible in our hyper individualizing, yet also dehumanizing society. And do not forget that there is always the possibility for even those you would least expect it from to surprise us and to semiotically introduce novelty in this milieu. In this sense, too, semiosis is never finished. For meaning is the connective tissue of a living body continually made and remade, and that by necessity and to the exclusion of none, we are all part of. So, thank you for your time and attention. Yeah. And just to say that in keeping with the spirit of learning from each other, I would like to welcome questions, but also especially ideas and suggestions that might help our project. So, thank you. Mm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What was important in doing that? Uh, right. Um, I would say that being familiar with biosemiotics in a way also informed my perspective when I started this project. And the thing that really helped me was, so I talk about familiarization. Um, um, for me, I know my brother very well, but I didn't know the other residents in the group. So to spend more time there, to actually see them, to just be there, that really helped me develop a relationship with them. So that also informed my perspective as to how to approach this project as a whole. So that's, yeah, that's one thing I could say in response to that. Yeah.